Home. It's time to learn geography. No! Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbs. By the way, you can get Geography Now merch like this Geography Now shirt at geographynow.com. Not selling out if it's your brand. So we did the UAE, the UK, and now the last of the United Triplet countries. After doing this channel for nearly a decade of my life, it's finally time. We have made it to my home country. Let's make this a big one. Here we go. Welcome to the United States of America. The USA is a very complex place when it comes to the way that it's structured and the way that the domain administers itself. It's almost like 50 mini countries and 5 territories with their own unique identities, yet they all speak the same language and have some common understanding of American life. Everything is bigger, wider, spread out. We love shopping and having everything conveniently available now. I mean, that's why we invented things like fast food, the parking lot, the modern shopping mall, highway service plazas, drive-thrus, the barcode pricing system, credit cards, escalators, and public restrooms are everywhere and they're free. In any case, apart from that little civil structure overview, let's look at the map and discuss the actual location and sovereignty of the USA, shall we? First of all, the USA is located on the North American continent, with the main chunk of the country, known as the Lower 48, where 98% of the population lives, is sandwiched between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to the east and west, and Canada and Mexico border them on the north and south. The country consists of 50 states divided into 3,143 counties, or county equivalents, 3,243 if you include territory divisions. 3 states have weird detached exclaves on the Canadian border. They are the Northwest Angle and Elm Point for Minnesota, Point Roberts, Washington, and Alberg, Vermont. The only state distinctly divided into 2 continental land-based units is Michigan, with the upper and lower peninsulas. The capital of the country is Washington, D.C., which is a federal district not belonging to any state and is under direct control of Congress, despite having a higher population than some states. In addition, the USA has 5 major unincorporated territories. They are Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, American Samoa, Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands. In addition, there are 9 minor outlying islands, all of which are also unincorporated, except for Palmyra Atoll for some reason, even though all these islands have no permanent population. The U.S. has a disputed claim over 2 small sandbank islands in the Caribbean as well, both administered by Colombia. They are the Serranía Bank and the Bajo Nuevo Bank as well. That being said, this means if you include all the territories and dependency, the USA has a total of 11 time zones, although only 9 of them are used by people. 2 strange time zone anomalies exist, the first one being the Little and Big Diomede Islands between Alaska and Russia, and American Samoa and Samoa. The Diomedes are less than 3 miles away and are visible to each other, yet they straddle the international date line and are hence an entire day apart from each other. In addition, there are 325 Native American reservations spread throughout the lower 48. These areas, although under U.S. federal territory, have a degree of autonomy for the native tribes that administer them. The largest cities in the USA population-wise are New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. The busiest airports, however, are Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Denver International. The U.S. has an incredibly wide network of roads and highways connecting all states except Hawaii, obviously. The longest one being U.S. Route 20. Although the U.S. does have a relatively wide rail network for freight trains, passenger train lines have decreased over the years in favor of road transport, and today the only long-distance intercity network is operated by Amtrak. Our largest shipping port is the Port of Los Angeles in conjunction with the Port of Long Beach, which are 2 separate entities yet physically joined. Finally, one last thing, although the USA has no claim over Antarctica, we do have the largest Antarctic station at McMurdo, which can facilitate up to 1,000 people, and we also have the only station located on the geographic South Pole at Edmonton Scott Station. And in case if you were wondering, it follows the +12 UTC time zone. Fun fact, did you know that in Hawaii it's actually illegal to laugh loudly, so you kind of have to keep it at aloha. Few side notes. 1, I made a video explaining the Native American reservations and statistical areas as well as territories of the USA. I figured they deserve their own videos because it's a big topic. Check them out. 2, each state and territory has their own flag, license plate design, and nickname. For example, the state I was born in, Minnesota, is the land of 10,000 lakes. Indiana, I still have no idea what a Hoosier is, but you do you. Cities have nicknames too, like Chicago is Chi-Town or the Windy City. New York, the Big Apple. Orlando, the Big Orange. Seattle is the Emerald City, and so on. 3, yes, the USA is a car country. It's part of our culture. See, the majority of our country was built post-industrial revolution, so many of our cities have easily navigable straight grid-like road networks with accommodating wider roads as opposed to the spider web of narrow medieval cobblestone alleys built for pedestrians. In the US, you can get your own license at age 16. For many of us, it's a rite of passage and bragging right in high school to show off your car, even if you're just borrowing mom's minivan. 4, we also kind of have an awkward situation with Guantanamo Bay, which is is located in Cuba. It's kind of like this. I am the first president of Cuba. Now that we are independent from the US, I will offer you a perpetual lease to Guantanamo Bay.
Awesome. We'll pay you guys every year.
We are the new Cuba. We don't want you. Get out.
Hey, your old president agreed a perpetual lease to us until both countries agree or we abandon the property. We don't want to do that. We're gonna stay here.
Well, yeah, revolution. We don't recognize that treaty.
Well, we do. Here's your lease check for the year. Thanks for doing business. I'll shake myself. We'll see you next year, okay? Okay.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. At one point, the USA took administrative control over Cuba after the Spanish-American War, in addition to Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Of course, the Philippines and Cuba gained their own independence. And the US also used to control the Panama Canal Zone for about 70 years. It was like, all right, Panama, you're getting your independence from us.
Woo! Me gusta!
But I agreed to let the Americans have sovereignty over the Canal Zone because, you know, they're kind of building it.
What the? I mean, you want us to leave and take all of our money and you finish building it, or? For now, no, but let's talk in 70 years. Okay then.
Yeah. In addition, after World War II, we took administrative control over many of the islands in the Pacific that Japan used to control. The three Micronesian island groups of Palau, the Marshall Islands, and the Federated States of Micronesia were labeled as U.S. Trust Territories until they gained independence in 1986. Today, they are the only countries that have the Compact of Free Association status, meaning the U.S. provides defense, financial assistance, and social services to the countries, whereas the citizens are allowed to move, live, and work in the U.S. and easily obtain citizenship if they desire, and in return, they allow the U.S. to have military bases. In any case, every section of the United States has a unique story on how it eventually became part of the country. It basically goes like this. For example, the USA started as 13 British colonies that pretty much operated everything east of the Mississippi River. At one point, everything up to what is now Minnesota was just called Virginia. In 1803, we obtained the Louisiana Purchase from France, which didn't even have a properly defined western border. It just kind of arbitrarily ended at the Rockies. This doubled the size of the country, and a bunch of Acadian French-speaking criminals from Canada suddenly became American. In 1819, we expanded to the Pacific for the first time and had a shared condominium with the British in Oregon Territory. 2 years later, Florida was ceded to us from Spain in a treaty in which we said that we would cede any claims to Texas. Well, long story incredibly short, the Texans in Texas kind of fought Mexico and became their own country for 10 years and then decided to cede their country back to the USA. In 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the Mexican-American War, and the Alta California area was ceded to the USA. And after some quick borderline readjustments and new states popping up, the continuous USA was complete. The Guano Islands Act started in the 1850s, got us to claim a bunch of random small islands in the Pacific and the Caribbean. Civil War split us up for about 10 years, but then we reunited. Meanwhile, Alaska was purchased by Russia. 1898, Hawaii was annexed from the Kingdom of Hawaii. 1 year later, after the Spanish-American War, a bunch of new islands joined, but only Puerto Rico and Guam would stay as territories. 1 year later, Samoa was taken over under the Tripartite Convention. Later, only what is now American Samoa would vote to remain. And finally, in 1917, we bought the Virgin Islands from Denmark. Yeah, almost every American has played the Oregon Trail in school and has died of dysentery. Just want to give a huge thanks to Bright Trip for making that animation. You guys are awesome. Check out their websites. They got some cool stuff. We tried to buy Greenland like 3 times and they kept saying no, but like, come on, Greenland, come on. On that note, you can kind of tell the story behind places in the USA based off of the language the name comes from. For example, many places in the middle of the USA that used to be part of the Louisiana Purchase have French names like Lafayette, Des Moines, or Des Moines. Hell, the entirety of Louisiana was named after King Louis the 16th, 14th, whatever, we're not French anymore. Places that used to belong to Spain and later Mexico have Spanish names like Puerto Rico, San Diego, and yes, even the city I live in, Los Angeles, Los Angeles. Otherwise, many cities and half of all the states are named after Native American words and or anglicized versions of Native American words. Kentucky, Ohio, Oklahoma. The city of Chicago means wild onion in the Miami, Illinois tribe language. In any case, basically our country was born out of revolution. Long story short, we were a colony of Great Britain, not the UK yet, but Great Britain, for about 170 years until King George III came in and went back crazy. Or at least that's how we see it. You know, the Brits are more like, you ungrateful colonials. We declared independence in 1776, which by the way, thank you Morocco for being the first country in the world to recognize us as a nation in 1777. Hey, I beat them to it in 1776.
Hey, you don't get to speak for me as a nation as a whole. You will recognize them when I say so. Okay, now you can recognize them.
However, the fighting went on for 7 more years until the Treaty of Paris was signed, in which Britain officially recognized us as a nation. Meanwhile, Canada just up north was like,
now I'm daddy's favorite.
But then like 80 years later, it was like,
ugh, I'm still dad's favorite.
In any case, with the exception of a few other political entities, up until then, most of the world had been ruled either by monarchs or some kind of singular figurehead with huge authority that all administration pointed towards. The US founding fathers developed a system of mixing elements of English common law, Enlightenment philosophy, classic republicanism from ancient Greece and Rome, federalism, and separation of power. Basically, because we were so traumatized by the monarchical rule, we wanted to make a country ruled by a system that would make it really hard for the government to have too much power. In addition, we decided to become a federation, as in states share a singular sovereignty and must abide by the same federal constitution and the rights that it gives, like freedom of speech and press. But aside from that, they have the right to operate autonomously based on whatever regional values that each state holds and votes on. This is why sometimes people have to cross state lines to do things that might otherwise be illegal in the states they live in. Important to note, not everything was perfect in the beginning legislatively. Of course, we still had a long way to go and many things to fix. For example, slavery was still practiced and it did have legal provisions. Women were not able to vote and so on. But for what it's worth, the USA was the first nation state founded on enlightened principles of unalienable natural rights, consent of the governed, and liberal democracy. So yeah. America! In any case, history is boring. Let's look at some pretty pictures and whatnot. Let's discuss the famous places of the United States, and I will do it! Now, we all know about the most publicized landmarks like the Statue of Liberty, Las Vegas, the Empire State Building, Times Square, the Golden Gate Bridge, Mount Rushmore, Grand Canyon, Lincoln Memorial, Niagara Falls, the Hollywood Sign, Gateway Arch, and Disney World, the largest amusement park in the world. We have 130 national monuments and 24 UNESCO heritage sites. Yeah, we get it. But let's talk about some of the more underrated places that are just as equally as fascinating as their over-publicized counterparts. Instead of New York, try Chicago. Instead of the Statue of Liberty, maybe check out the Birth of the New World or the Dignity Statue in South Dakota. Instead of Mount Rushmore, try the Crazy Horse Monument. Instead of the Grand Canyon, try Arches National Park, Vermilion Cliffs, Devil's Tower, and my favorite spot, Monument Valley. Instead of Disney World, try Six Flags Magic Mountain. Instead of the Golden Gate Bridge, try the Chesapeake Bay or Sunshine Skyway or the Mackinac Bridges or the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway in Louisiana, the longest continuous bridge in the world. For history, yes, we have history. I'm talking about ancient pre-colonial. Go to the Cahokia Mounds, Poverty Point Earthworks, Hovenweep, Tonto, Chimney Rock, Navajo National Monument, or the Pueblos of Mesa Verde, Taos, or the Chaco Culture National Historical Park, Aztec Ruins, Petroglyph National Monument, Montezuma Castle. So many things. We have the tallest trees and the tallest tree in the world, the Sailing Stones of Death Valley. In Hawaii, you can literally see active lava spewing rocks, or the world's largest protected marine area at Papahanaumokuakea. Also, they have the Polynesian Culture Center and one of our best kept secrets, White Sands National Park, that looks like you're walking on the moon. Go to the underrated states like West Virginia, they have River Gorge. North Dakota has the strange enchanted highway. The New England states have the best autumn trees. Oregon has the ghost forest. Wisconsin has so many weird whimsical attractions, my favorite one being the House on the Rock. Idaho, Montana, Eastern California, Nevada, and Alaska have some of the best preserved Western style ghost towns. Freaking Alaska, ice caves, fjords, tundras, probably some of the best nature in the entire country. American Samoa and Guam and the Marianas are a wonderful place to see Micronesian and Polynesian culture displays. The Virgin Islands are like the wedding honeymoon capital of our country. God, there's so much, and that's not even the beginning. This is one of the reasons why like only 56% of Americans own passports, because we kind of have a lot to see in our own backyard. And it's no wonder considering that our backyard is one of the most biodiverse in the world. Let's discuss more of that in... Now, to summarize, every conceivable landscape you can think of, we have. The USA is regarded as one of the most geographically diverse nations on Earth, and with that landscape spectrum, you can find an infinite amount of natural wonders. But first, let's look at the map. So first, let's start with the lower 48. Generally speaking, there are 7 main physical regions. The coastal plains extending from the North Atlantic states to the Gulf of Mexico, split off by the Appalachian Mountains. From there, you have the Central Plains and the Great Lakes region east of the Mississippi River, Lake Superior being the largest lake and the largest freshwater lake by surface area in the world, third largest by volume. However, only about 45% of it belongs to the US, meaning the largest lake completely within the US boundaries and largest lake by area in the world fully within a single country would actually be Lake Michigan. Altogether, these 5 lakes make up about 1/5 of the world's above surface fresh water. West of the Mississippi, you have the Great Plains, the flattest part of the country, and home to Tornado Alley, where the strongest and most tornadoes form than anywhere else on Earth. From there, you reach the Rocky Mountains, the US's longest chain and third longest in the world after the Andes and the Great Escarpment in South Africa. The Rockies are also the source of the longest river in the United States, not the famous Mississippi, which begins in Minnesota, but by 1 mile extra, the Missouri River actually beats them at 3,341 miles. Past the Rockies is the Great Basin, which holds the U.S.'s desert ecoregions, 8 cold deserts with alpine flora, and 3 dry, hot shrubland, rocky, sandy deserts. Fun fact, the Sonoran Desert, shared with Mexico, is the only place in the world where you can find the famous saguaro cacti. You've probably seen them in movies and TV shows. They grow here naturally. From there, the other side of the Great Basin is bordered by the coastal ranges, aka the Cascades and the Sierra Nevada. Keep in mind, this range also sits on the San Andreas Transform Fault Line, which is part of the larger Ring of Fire. That means this area is the most earthquake-prone region in the country, with lots of geothermal activity, such as the eruption of Mount St. Helens in the 80s. From there, the state of Alaska up north actually has the highest peak, Denali, as well as all of the top 10 highest peaks in the country as well. Otherwise, unlike the islands formed by the Ring of Fire, the Hawaiian Islands were not formed by a fault line or rift system, but rather by their own unusual isolated hotspot where magma spurted out on its own through plumes in the middle of the ocean. This is also known as the Emperor Hawaiian Seamount Chain, and technically, if you consider height from the base of the mountain to the peak, Mauna Kea on Hawaii's Big Island could be seen as the tallest mountain in the world, as over 25,000 feet or 75% of its total elevation goes underwater to the seafloor. Yeah, what the Midwest lacks in landscape, they make up for in skyscape. We have the craziest atmospheric conditions in the Great Plains. People from all over the world come to our country just to see tornadoes. It's a thing, tornado tourism. Oh, and fun fact, many homes, schools, and businesses in the Midwest and Great Plains have tornado shelters and cellars. And in schools, the kids also practice tornado drills. I had to do that as a kid. And in that regard, some students in the West Coast have to do like earthquake drills. We know how to handle natural disasters here. We're pretty good at it. In the USA, life is like a constant economic game of opportunistic chess moves mixed with skill and luck. We know our potential and we want more. That's why we never stop moving. We hate mediocre, mundane complacency. You could win it all, or you could mess up and lose it all. But the point is, you could. We go crazy over that word. Not every country in the world offers a could to their people. We aren't really afraid of failure or embarrassment. That stuff passes away easily. Hell, we even capitalize and make money off of our embarrassment. Have you seen our reality shows? But the one thing we are terrified of is regret. And that's the core of the American spirit. An American doesn't wonder, we dream. Whether it's plausible or deluded and foolish, we dream. Anyway, that was kind of a ramble. Not gonna get too far into it. In any case, it's time for my triple shot espresso break. Let's bring Noah in to fill in for the rest of the segment, shall we?
The fire may be gone, but the heat still lingers. Straight from the Great Plains, cyclone country, the state of Iowa. It is I, Noah. So let's get into some statistics first, shall we? It is already well known that today the USA has the largest economy by nominal GDP out of any nation and the second largest purchasing power parity after China. The dollar is the most widely used currency in international transactions and is the world's reserve currency. Used by many other countries as an official and de facto currency, we are the world's largest importer and second largest exporter after China. Out of the world's 500 largest companies, over 120 are headquartered in the USA. We alone have about 40% of the world's billionaires and 30% of the world's millionaires. NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange are the largest stock exchanges in the world by market capitalization and trade volume. Some of our most profitable exports include petroleum products, electronics, machinery, aerospace and defense equipment, and civilian passenger vehicles, and medical and scientific equipment. We have the top most profitable companies and the largest commercial brands on earth that are world-renowned, such as Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Tesla. We even invented the concept of venture capital. It's not enough for us Americans to just profit. We have to potentially profit. Our franchises have become widely globalized. In some of the most remote places on earth, you can find either a McDonald's or KFC. And even the countries that either hate or restrict opening up an American franchise will often rip them off and capitalize off the idea. Whether or not an international lawsuit ensues or not is another question. The point is they know the idea works. In addition to entrepreneurship, innovation, creativity, and invention has been a deep-rooted part of our history. We were even the first country to have an electronic grid provided to citizens as a utility in 1882. The Wright brothers invented the first sustained and controlled airplane in 1903, which pioneered and revolutionized the air travel industry. We love getting the world involved in our commerce. This is in large part thanks to our free market and capitalistic economic model in which market is run by the consumers. And basically thanks to our loose marketing laws, almost anything within the realm of public decency can be advertised. We go so far as advertise things like medicines, colleges, and yes, even the famous attorney settlement claim billboards and cheesy commercials are an American staple.
Did you get hit by a car? Did you get mesothelioma? Or did you get shot by a bear with mesothelioma? Well, call right now because you might be entitled to financial compensation.
You gotta love those commercials. In any case, some people like to vacation in our nature zones like our favorite animal correspondent. You know what? This time I believe it's just Caleb. Take it away.
Hey guys, so you know, I've been Geary Harlow on this channel for a while, but as we reach the home country, it's time to be real. And this is the real me.
It actually is.
You couldn't tell before because I was wearing a hat and a disguise. Just like Noah, also hailing from the great state of Iowa. It is I, the American, Caleb Seaton. So, the USA is classified as one of the top 10 mega diverse nations on Earth. Over 600 species of reptiles and amphibians, more than 800 species of birds, over 430 species of mammals. The largest mammal within our country being the North American bison. Today, we have 63 national parks, 13 of which are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, including the world's first national park and probably our most famous one, Yellowstone. The swampy parts of the Deep South is the reptile haven. You have alligators and turtles lurking everywhere. There are even crossing signs with gators on them. In the Rockies, we have black and brown bears, bobcats, and mountain lions.
Remember that time we saw a bear and what was it?
Oh my gosh, let me tell you this story. So Paul and I went on a camping trip up near Mammoth, California. One of the stupidest things we've ever done because we were like just warming up around the fire and I look behind Paul. It's a freaking bear like 15 feet away from you.
We found a bear.
Are you kidding me? That's a freaking bear.
We almost died.
In the Alaskan North, you can find grizzlies and polar bears, as well as narwhals and walruses. In the deserts, we have coyotes, javelinas, desert tortoises, and tarantulas. All along the west coast, you have harbor and elephant seals, giant Humboldt squids, porpoises, dolphins, and whales. Our tropical islands are home to some of the most amazing endemic bird and fish species, such as the Hawaiian honey creeper and the nene, and the state fish, the humuhumu nuku nuku apua'a. Did I do that right?
Got it. Oh my god.
And that, of course, brings us to our national animal, the bald eagle. Majestic, powerful, and swift. This eagle is found usually by large bodies of water as they prefer fish. They build the largest nests out of any bird on Earth. And yes, it is true, all American citizens, whether born or naturalized, are able to summon one at their will in times of emergency. I should salute it. And speaking of emergencies, I have to get back to my wife Jillian because I just had a second baby. Say hi to Eden Ray. She enjoys making bubbles out of her mouth. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Caleb. Actually, fun fact, the whole reason I got involved with Geography Now originally was because I met Barb's at Caleb's wedding.
And it's been great since then. Woo!
How about that? Enough on that. Let's discuss the food! First, let's start off with the American classic breakfast. You've seen it. Pancakes, bacon, sausage, eggs, and don't forget those hash browns. However, most Americans will eat another iconic American invention, cereal. That's right, we invented the fastest breakfast on earth. You just add milk and done. Otherwise, we have some very iconic regional cuisines. For one, let's bring it to the Native American side. Such dishes that are shared amongst numerous tribes in the lower 48 include things like fry bread, bison jerky, Three Sisters stew, wojapi, pemmican, wild rice. Whereas for the Inuits up north, you might find whale blubber / meat, caribou / reindeer meat and sausage, cloudberry or salmonberry jams, smoked Alaskan salmon, king crab legs, and a gudok, their dessert. Whereas on the islands like Hawaii and Samoa, you'll find many dishes baked in their own versions of the earth oven. Poi, or mashed purple taro paste, and kukui nut meat is the staple in many dishes. They specialize in numerous garnished seafood dishes like ahi-ahi and Pacific lobster. And the immigrants, like the Filipinos, Portuguese, and Japanese, even have incorporated their own fusion to modern-day Hawaiian cuisine in things like lokomoko, spam musubi, and poke bowls. Then we get to soul food, which you've probably heard of. Fried chicken and waffles, fried okra, macaroni and cheese, collard greens, ham hocks, and speaking of the South, our best kept secret, Cajun food. Imagine, if you will, if French cuisine was forced to use ingredients from the swamp and it actually worked. Almost every American grocery store has some kind of Cajun or Creole seasoning.
My favorite, Chef Gone Mad.
Things like gumbo, jambalaya, crawfish boil, pralines, boudin, beignets, alligator, and andouille sausage. New England has their own cuisine as well. Things like lobster rolls, lobster bisque, clam chowder, and you can't forget Maryland blue crab and crab cakes. We also have Tex-Mex cuisine, which typically has heavier ingredients and uses more flour tortillas instead of corn. Enchiladas, fajitas, quesadillas, and also we have so many different regional barbecue styles. And Barb's favorite, Kansas City style ribs.
Love it, so good.
So many places have their own style of pizzas and hot dogs. The biggest competitors are Chicago deep dish dish and New York thin crust. Americans are also known for their sweet pies, most notably apple pie, banana cream, lemon meringue, key lime pie, pecan pie. And speaking of pies, one of our favorites is pumpkin, served on Thanksgiving. And finally, our most iconic national dish, the burger, which has so many regional specialties. America would be nothing without the burger. Well, that's it for me, and until we meet again, stay tuned and stay ready.
Thank you, Noah. Quick side note in regards to the food stuff. Yes, we have a tipping culture at sit-down restaurants, not fast food chains. Typically, rates are 15 to 20%, and it's not that hard to calculate. You just take the price that you owe, move the decimal place one spot, and then divide that by 2, and then add that half to the moved decimal number that you originally priced yourself that you owe. Simple. And yes, we eat while walking. Like I said, we value our time. We want things now. And see, that's America. Every ethnic group has a story on how they got here, and everyone has their own thing, yet at the end of the day, we're all on the same journey of figuring out how we ended up sitting in our cars, eating Taco Bell in a Walmart parking lot, contemplating life choices at 3 a.m. We've all been there. Anyway, that's a charming way to introduce my people to the world. Let's jump into the demographics.
I think all Americans, they all want the same thing, live a good life. They just want different versions of that.
It's a constant wild chase and the hunt for the next big thing. We may all come from different backgrounds, but we've got each other's backs.
That, and we can all go to McDonald's at 5 a.m.
Opinionated and maybe a little crazy, but in a good way.
Bald eagles flying through the air, although those majority live in Canada now.
El boricua es orgullo, es pasión. Saber que de un 100 por 35 salen cosas muy grandes.
Americans are the only people on earth who will wear sunglasses after the sun is set.
So watch it. You gotta watch Top Gun, Maverick. It's all about the Mavericks, bro.
We love adventure. We love unpredictability as Americans.
Because the craziest stories come out of the United States of America. Whether it be a woman who got bit in the hand by a bear for punching it.
The generations of families that like the same team.
Mana'awa o ke kanaka vai he kanaka oiwi a kupa o kia aina me ke ano lavena lua ole ma kia honua a puni. Piha me ke aloha ka ha'aha'a ka ho'ihi no naku puna a me
knowing that you are a mixture of a plethora of stories, histories, and cultures.
A foreigner is someone who thinks an alligator is adorable and makes questionable decisions during a hurricane.
So there's the ideal and then there's the reality. Here in Washington, D.C., we don't even have full representation of Congress. We don't even have senators.
Not all of us talk in a country accent. The irony and like, how did we all get here? I ponder that a lot.
Nous a travaillandeurs, jouandeurs, et tellement les bons manger. Ah, tout quelqu'un laissait le bon temps rouler.
Being able to just go drive in any direction.
One of the most American things is going on a road trip.
And driving for hours without a second thought.
What it means to be an Alaskan is to live wild and explore.
It's being able to sleep when it's light 24 out, be awake when it's dark out. I love that midnight sun.
I believe an American is someone who embraces diversity and use it to pursue life, liberty, and happiness.
So for me, an American is someone who values and respects American ideals and freedoms.
But the land of the free, the home of the brave, honestly. But America is nothing without New York. It's all happening here.
Absurdly stubborn in your beliefs. At the end of the day, you're still gonna all be friends. You're gonna go out and get drinks with each other.
We are the masters of making fun of each other.
Being hungry, like after midnight, IHOP and Denny's are always there for you.
For me, it's the House of Waffles.
It isn't just a Waffle House, it's a Waffle Home.
The bad rep we get for calling football soccer.
This is America!
An American to me is someone who likes to have a good time and someone that likes free refills.
It's someone that likes very large portions at restaurants.
You can use your EBT card at fast food places and wear sweats pretty much anywhere you are.
An American, you can be anything.
And can turn any conversation into a competition.
There's no monolithic viewpoint or perspective on what makes an American American. Really, you get the whole melting pot. That's what America is.
So what is an American? This is a question I've pondered about for a long time when I was writing this script. From a young age, we are taught the value of individualism. You are special. You are unique. There is no one like you in the world. And in that regard, we are also taught that it's good that we're different because then everyone has something unique and special to add. If we were all the same, then there wouldn't really be much to add or learn or grow from. It's the diversity that empowers us. We look at the world around us and see that they already know our songs and watch our TV shows and movies. Oftentimes, they imitate things that we started and put their own own spin on it. We also regularly notice that on the news, people from all over the world fight to immigrate here. They seek refuge and asylum. It seems like they really want to join this country badly. So in a sense, taking all of that into account, not trying to sound boastful, but because of that, being an American citizen is kind of like, it sometimes feels like being part of some kind of weird elite club that a bunch of people want to join, or at the very least give attention to. And we love attention. It's practically our currency. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. The moment you give us your eyes and ears, we win. It feeds us. There's nothing we hate more than just being part of the crowd. Every American wants to find something about themselves that makes them stick out. This is why we obsess so much about things like labels and race. It's one of the easiest ways to forge an identity. We take DNA tests because at the end of the day, we all know that unless we're indigenous, we aren't native to this continent. We all come from somewhere else, and sometimes we're curious. We want to know who we are. Doesn't everybody? This may sound kind of shallow on the surface, but you kind of have to understand, like all the nations of the Americas, we're kind of like the lost children of the world. We never came from royalty or nobility, no ancient legacies to honor. So in a way, we don't really have much to lose. We have to build our own empires. Of course, every American has a different story, and not everyone will agree to this very sentiment, but at the very base, that's kind of what I guess it kind of somewhat feels like to be American. Yeah. Ooh, that was a speech. In any case, let's talk about the ethnic makeup of the USA, shall we? Motion graphic time!
First of all, the United States has about 340 million people and is the third most populous nation on Earth after China and India, and has the highest immigration out of any country in the world, and every nation on Earth has some kind of community or diaspora represented within it. The first and country's largest demographic being the white non-Hispanic group at about 60%, which mostly contains Caucasian Americans, typically with European origins. From there, the second largest community are Hispanic and Latino Americans, making up about 19% of the population. Keep in mind, the Latino and Hispanic communities are also incredibly diverse within themselves, and some may or may not also identify with either white or black communities, depending on where they feel on the racial scale. From there, the black community makes up the third largest demographic at somewhere around 13% of the population. After that, Asians and Pacific Islanders make up about 7% of the population, the largest communities being Chinese, Filipinos, Indians, Vietnamese, Koreans, and Japanese, and the remaining 1% is mostly made up of Native American or Hawaiian/Alaskan natives. Also, keep in mind, some of these people listed here also register under 2 or more races or some other race. So in that regard, all these lines could be blurred and have asterisks applied to them, depending on what the individual claims on their documents.
We use the US dollar as our currency. We use the types A and B plug outlets, and we drive on the right side of the road. And just like we explained in the UK episode, the USA is one of the few countries that does not use the metric system. Our units of measurements are miles, feet, inches, acres, Fahrenheit, pounds, tons, ounces, pints, quarts, and our favorite unit of measurement, the big fat gallon. This is a gallon. We actually measure our gas in these units too, so yeah. Also keep in mind, sometimes we don't even care. We'll just make up our own units of measurement when we're too lazy. We literally measure things like fried chicken and popcorn in buckets and ice cream in tubs. Now going back to the ethnic makeup thing. It's important to note that most multi-generational Americans today have a degree of racial and genetic admixture. Most white Americans today are descendants of immigrants that arrived through Ellis Island, not British colonials, coming from countries like Germany, Ireland, Italy, and over time many of the whites kind of just mixed and created new American whites. It's not uncommon for them to have some Native American blood as well. And then it gets a little weird because some people are like, oh yeah, my great-grandma was 184th Cherokee. No, I'm special. And the same even applies to our black population. According to a study published in the American Journal of Human Genetics, the average black person in the USA has about 24% European ancestry, but it varies by the individual. We'll talk more about the racial story of the USA in a bit, but first, language. Technically, the US has never declared an official language. However, the de facto national language and language of use for all administration and documents is English, or at least American English. 28 states have voted to make English the official state language of their state. 3 states have de facto bilingual policies. They are Maine and Louisiana for French and New Mexico for Spanish. And oh my goodness, Cajun French sounds so cool. It's like lazy swamp French. Ah, bonsoir, mon chéri. Essayez du gombo et laissez le bon temps rouler. As for Hawaiian, well, actually, I figured maybe we should let a real Hawaiian explain. Take it away, Mr. Kamaka.
Did you know that Hawaii is the only official state where English and Hawaiian serves as co-equal languages in the administration? Sometimes you can even hear Hawaiian being spoken in legislature meetings. Since the 80s, there's been a huge Hawaiian language revival because of the creation of Hawaiian immersion schools. We have schools for preschool all the way to 12th graders, and everything is done in Hawaiian. About half a century ago, Hawaiian language was at the brink of extinction with only 2,000 native speakers. Today, in 2023, I'm proud to say there's over 30,000 people speaking our native tongue.
Thank you, Kamaka. Follow him on his social medias and his websites. He's an awesome guy doing great things for Hawaii. Otherwise, 3 of the territories also have official bilingual status along with English for their native languages, Spanish for Puerto Rico, Chamorro for Guam, and Samoan for American Samoa. And the Northern Mariana Islands is the only officially trilingual entity with Chamorro and Carolinian as the official languages alongside with English. However, as a whole, bilingualism has been growing fast in the US, mostly with Spanish and French as our most commonly taught languages in schools. In the 80s, our populace was only about 11% bilingual. Today, however, that number has more than doubled as the Census Bureau estimates that somewhere around 1 in 5 people in the US ages 5 and up uses another language at home, and 1 in 4 Americans are proficient enough to converse in another language. In any case, religion. In the USA, regardless of level of devotion, somewhere around 70, maybe upwards to 75% claim to be affiliated with some kind of Christian denomination, the largest ones being Protestant, followed by Catholic and non-denominational. Otherwise, the next largest religious groups are Jews and Buddhists at somewhere around 2% each, and then Muslims at around 1%. For the rest of the country, it's kind of like a complicated topic because they tend to fall into a more agnostic approach in which they might claim to be spiritual but not religious. So going back to the topic, how did all the races end up here? Well, to start off, of course, the originals were the Native Americans. In a nutshell, they come from numerous tribes that each have their own customs and traditions. There are over 570 recognized ones. The Native American story of this country is an acknowledged sad one, riddled in government-mandated relocations, mass killings such as the one at the Battle of Wounded Knee, and broken treaties all over the place. In regard to that though, there's also a beautiful side to their story with pride and courage, and tribes like the Navajo and Hopi that were honored for their code talker program in World War II. And today, some tribes like the Cherokee and Osage are starting to revive their languages to more modern usage with things like teaching it in schools, putting their tribal scripts on street signs and businesses and windows and documents and so on. I've said this before, every American needs to visit a tribal reservation at least once and spend time learning about them. After that, whites from England started coming in from the late 1500s to the early 1600s, basically English colonialism. After that, the Atlantic slave trade from West Africa began with Portugal and eventually made its way to the United States, which is where most of our black population is derived from. A more contemporary term that some of them might use is ADOS, or American Descendant of Slavery, to distinguish themselves from blacks that immigrated from the Caribbean or Africa. Keep in mind, the United States only took in about 4% of the enslaved peoples from the Atlantic slave trade. Most of them either went to Brazil or the Caribbean when it was under the British. Eventually, the Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation happened. From there, it was still a struggle with a tense time riddled with apartheid laws and customs. Even in the North, where they fought against slavery, there was still racism. There were Jim Crow laws, the bombing of Tulsa, the Rosewood incident, redlining. Finally, in the 60s, the Civil Rights Movement occurred. The 60s was kind of like the big moment. It is said that slavery and the treatment of Native Americans is the darkest chapter of American history, our biggest shame. We don't hide from it, we acknowledge it, we teach it in our schools. It's like what the Nazi thing is to Germany or the imperial thing is to Japan. For what it's worth, the story of Black America is one with so many chapters, but if you look at how the story unfolds over the centuries, there is a beauty to it. Our country could not be what it is with so many amazing individuals that have revolutionized not just our country, but made shockwaves throughout the whole world. Look, I'm not trying to speak on behalf of the black experience because I'm not black. I mean, I did that DNA test and it said North African, but I'm not claiming anything unless y'all approve, and if you do, I'll bring ribs and Henny to the cookout. Hey, hey, hey. But for what it's worth, if you must take anything away from this, I think most Americans will agree that the story of America is nothing without the story of the black population. In any case, from there, we move on to the other major communities. The Chinese were the first Asians to arrive as rail line workers in the mid-1800s. Filipinos started coming in after the colonial years, then the Koreans and Vietnamese through the Korean War and the Vietnam War. For the Latino community, it's interesting. Some isolated communities of Mexicans and Spanish people were already living in certain parts of the West after lands were acquired from the Mexican-American War. However, their populations weren't really high until large migration waves came in the 20th century. From there, Latin Americans from all over started building communities. Los Angeles has the largest Salvadoran and Guatemalan communities. Miami has Cubans, Venezuelans, Colombians. Puerto Ricans and Dominicans love New York for some reason, even though the climate is nothing like their perfect, beautiful tropical islands. I don't get that whole thing, but whatever, you guys do you. And of course, when there's Latinos, you'll always find Mexicans somehow in the mix. There's a lot of other groups and stories behind their origins of coming here, but we just don't have time. This video is already getting long enough. If you are from a community that I didn't mention, please feel free to write about it in the comments and teach us, but otherwise we have to move on. In any case, one thing you'll notice is that our country tries really, really hard to make sure every race has some kind of representation in media or retail. For example, major store chains that sell cosmetics usually have to provide a line that comes in all shades of the skin spectrum, and most of them will have what they sometimes call ethnic hair or textured hair or coily hair sections. And fun fact, Art and I actually shop in this part of the store because why, Art?
Murray's pomade. It's the only thing that seems to work on our hair because our hair's thick.
We always use it.
So yeah, we use this all the time.
This is a true American classic. Yeah, not a sponsorship. Not a sponsorship. We just really like this stuff.
Yeah, although it could be a sponsorship.
First non-black people to be a sponsor. by Murray's.
Yeah, you could use a ginger.
You would be considered the face of diversity for them. Since the 70s, most of our TV shows and cartoons have had unspoken diversity quotas in which every cast will usually have some minority character, either main, reoccurring, or guest character. Our toy sections at stores usually contain dolls and action figures that come in all races. Nothing more iconic to this sentiment than the famous collectible American Girl dolls. Then you have the really obvious attempts like Captain Planet, Magic School Bus, and that puppet show that tried too hard. Look, even if it comes off a little forced and pandering or cringy, we try our best and usually we mean well. In any case, that was such a long-winded explanation of American social dynamics. One person who also means well and is quite dynamic would be Art. So let's switch up the subject and talk about the sports of the USA.
It is I, Artemis, hailing from the great state of Washington. So let's get started. For one, let's all go way back to the beginning. Tribes like the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and the tribe Creek played chunky, which involved rolling a disc and throwing a spear. Some of the Algonquin tribes played some games similar to soccer called Pasakawa Quahog, which could have had up to 500 people playing at the same time. And yes, since this is the USA episode, I'm gonna just call it soccer this time. Soccer. And the most famous one that survives to this day and is actually the oldest organized sports in North America, lacrosse. Fast forward to today, and numerous sports have been invented in our country. We love our sports so much that we even created a sport that cheers on other sports. It's called cheerleading. Ever heard of it? Oh, and one thing, almost all schools in the USA have a mascot, which is usually a costume character to help cheer on the team. And you know you had a real American experience if your school had to change its mascot due to outdated racist undertones.
Oh yeah, my school did that.
And then we get the big three: baseball, basketball, and American football. Although some might say baseball was inspired by the game rounders from England, the first official formalized version of baseball was created in New York City in 1845 and has become America's pastime sport. And basketball was created in Massachusetts.
By a Canadian.
Yeah, that's true, but if he wanted to make it a Canadian sport, he would have stayed in Canada.
Oh, you
get the
We love you, Canada, though.
Yeah, we love you. Anyway, people all over the world know our most famous player of all time, Michael Jordan, who is a multi-billionaire and never has to worry about life ever again. Are you serious, dude? You wrote that.
He's set for life.
Yeah. Let's become billionaires. Then we get to American football. We just call it football, sometimes called gridiron. It's our most popular sport. It was basically like a sport inspired from rules and techniques found in rugby and soccer, invented by Walter Camp in the 1870s and first played by 4 universities. Many outside the US and Canada might not quite get the sport, so if you have to summarize it, it's kind of like if you mixed war and speed chess.
2 teams, 11 players, they have to get to the end side.
Okay, let me just describe football really quick. Okay, the chunky fat guys are the, right Paul? The chunky and fat. The lineman on the front, and the quarterback is trying to get the ball to whoever that can score touchdowns. That's basically it. And it is a big deal here, like a really big deal, the Super Bowl. Today, the USA is the most successful nation at the Olympics, holding nearly 3,000 medals, about 1,200 of which are golds. We even have the most decorated Olympic athlete of all time, swimmer Michael Phelps. We have hosted the Olympics 8 times, and soon the 9th is going to be here in Los Angeles in 2028. We will also host the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and Los Angeles will be a host city as well. Otherwise, we have to bring up a bunch of other fringe sports, such as running a reindeer in Iditarod in Alaska, monster truck rallies, freestyle motocross, and of course, one of our favorite American pastimes, entertainment wrestling. Things like WWF and WWE are staples of our American diet. There is nothing more American than WrestleMania. All the superstars and cheesy guest celebrities battle it out and destroy each other. Well, destroy each other. Do they really? I mean, come on.
It's so real.
It's so real, right? Those are not actors for sure. And there are loads of independent lower tier entertainment wrestling leagues in which sometimes get like really weird with like a chicken fights a wizard or a pizza chef and a green goblin or a Pop-Tart and a mermaid. That sounds like a nightmare actually. And that's it for me. I'm gonna get out of here. You know guys, I am so proud to be an American. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode and I love you all. Thank you.
That was a great way to end it, man.
Shut up, Paul.
Thank you, Art. On that that note, what is the easiest way to make friends with an American? Well, you have to master the art of the American interruption. Let me explain. In other countries, it's considered rude to listen in on other people's conversations, let alone interrupt them while they're talking. But here in the USA, it's a social art form. In a way, unless we are quietly whispering something, we kind of don't mind if you hear us. And if you hear us talking about something you really understand well and you really feel like you could contribute something to the conversation, then you are allowed to subtly budge your way into the conversation. For example.
Okay, do you remember that Scare Factor episode where they made him bungee jump and they almost hit the
Yeah,
water?
I remember that. Did you see that one episode?
He's gonna eat the guy alive!
Do you remember when they blended up the centipedes? And it was
We're American best friends.
Keep in mind, this can go both ways for shared interests and shared hatreds.
Yo, did you hear that new Blake album?
No, he's not as good as he used to be.
No, he
pre-2017 Blake was
dragging.
No, he just be crying.
Do you guys remember that music video with the girl in like the orange dress? Like, what was
what was that all about?
We're American best friends.
And look, to my fellow Americans, I know some of you guys have been through some rough patches in the way how you see yourselves in our country, but let me just remind you a few things. Our country has gone through a lot of crazy things, a lot of shameful things in the past, but we also have a lot of glory and a lot of accomplishments. It's your country just as much as it is mine, and you're my family, and we get to share in the glory of this country. 21 elements on the periodic table were discovered or co-discovered by us, and 5 of them are named after places in our country. We absolutely lead the world in space exploration. We're the only people that have landed on the moon, and we did it 6 times and played golf on it. We sent the first satellite images of other planets like Jupiter, Saturn, and even Pluto, and we were the first to land a rover on Mars. We pioneered the Genome Project and pioneered so many medical advancements. We donate more money for charity and aid for people in need across the world than all the other countries combined. We have the #1 film industry in the world. We invented so many things. I'm not even gonna get into it and name them all, but one of them being personal computers and the internet and YouTube, which you would need to watch this video. And that's just a small fraction of the heritage that your nation gets to claim, and you and I are a part of it. So buck up, kiddo. No matter how much we fight, we're still family in the end, and we're all kind of pretty awesome. And I guess that's who we are as Americans. We're just the lost children of the world that made our own thing. And that's our heritage. And to talk more about how that heritage is subdivided regionally, here's Hannah with the culture segment.
Hello, everyone. We are at the America episode, and you know I have to start it out with a big Roll Tide because you know I am from Alabama. Me, Annie, and the baby. Actually, the baby's not from Alabama. It's from California.
Oh, you're gonna have a California baby.
Oh, no. So when I say American culture, lots of things probably pop into your head. Surfing and skateboarding, catch-up, ranch dressing, pickup trucks, cowboys, pop and locking, shopping scooters, yellow school buses, drinks with ice, 64-ounce cups, red Solo cups, spray cans of cheese, root beer, to-go bag, carpet floors, wearing shoes indoors, and so on. These are all fun and true to some extent, but there's a deeper story behind our people. For one, culture in the USA is typically divided into 5 main regions within the lower 48 and micro regions within them. So let's start off. Northeasterners are hustling business folk. It is home to the Bosch Wash Corridor, the largest megalopolis in the world in terms of economic output, with about 1/6 of the entire country's population. People here live in or have close access to large metropolitan centers, which most likely means they are acquainted with a wide range of ideas, opportunities, office buildings, and the daily grind of modern life. Funny enough, Pennsylvania is also home to the largest Amish community that chooses to avoid modern technology. The Midwest, or the Great Lakes region, is the industrial and manufacturing belt. The lakes and rivers help them prosper in trade historically. Detroit is known for its car industry, hence the nickname Motown or Motor City. Chicago processes food and machinery. Wisconsin is the dairy capital. In fact, 2 of the top 3 best hospitals in the country and in the world are here. Overall, the Midwest is good at making things, and they are famous for having some of the funniest accents and nicest people in the country.
Oh, don't you know?
Then we get to the Great Plains and the frontier. This is the breadbasket and mountains of the nation. Basically, this is the resource epicenter. After these lands were acquired, the U.S. government encouraged westward expansion to the citizens by implementing the Homestead Act in 1862. So basically, this became the Wild West if you've seen the classy, kitschy Americana Western films. This area also has the most Native American reservations as well. Be respectful to the tribes if you ever enter the land, as they have their own autonomous set of rules that may differ from the state they are in. Colorado is known for having the healthiest people in the country. Wyoming is one of the few places where you can still see authentic cowboys and cowgirls. Utah and Idaho have the heaviest concentration of the Mormon community. Arizona and New Mexico have a desert culture. They know how to handle heat and thrive in it. Then there's the West Coast, California, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. Basically, two things dominate this region: entertainment, which is literally what we're doing right now on the West Coast, and tech innovation. Everyone knows Los Angeles is the entertainment capital of the world, home to Hollywood, where the largest and busiest studios and production facilities in the world operate. Up north, you start getting tech hubs like Silicon Valley and Seattle, the startup and innovation centers with companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. Everyone knows Vegas in Nevada, the largest casino state. However, not everything is neon lights and robotics. Oregon is where the whole lumber industry pretty much started, and today some of the best alpine forests are found here, so you find more nature-y people out in those parts. And finally, we reached the South, my home region, the region everyone in the US is moving to right now. This is probably the most well-known, distinct region of the USA. Most people, whether religious or not, have had some kind of affiliation with the church growing up and will find themselves praying, even if they are on a reality show intended to showcase their drunken sexual escapades. And that's also because everyone knows the South is the best party place in the country. But tangent, because a lot of our colleges have the best football teams. Reasons to celebrate. Louisiana is our best kept secret. They have the unique Cajun and Creole culture that dominates everything. There's nothing like Mardi Gras on Bourbon Street, but if you want the original and real Mardi Gras, you have to go to Mobile, Alabama. And as much as I hate to admit it, the entire state of Florida is kind of a non-stop party. Even hurricanes don't stop them. Everyone knows the strangest and craziest things happen in Florida. I think it's because it's so hot and humid there. South Florida is home to Miami, which is basically North Cuba. It has a unique Caribbean culture. Literally, you need to speak Spanish. The Mississippi Delta is where so many famous people like Elvis Presley and Oprah were born. You have the Appalachian or Piedmont South, where banjo and bluegrass music began and where some of the best moonshine is made. Along the coasts of North and South Carolina and Georgia, you have the unique Gullah community, descendants of the freed slaves that inhabit the Barrier Islands. They are known for speaking their own unique Creole that has West African influences, musical performances, and sweetgrass woven crafts. Then of course we get to Texas, the big guy. Let's just say Texas is not just a cowboy state. It's evolving into a major modern tech and entrepreneur hub. They're tough, they're proud, and they love their state. In Alaska, you can actually find bush communities that live mostly off the grid and survive in the elements and prefer bartering instead of using money. Native Hawaiians invented surfing, and they were ocean navigation experts, traversing the entire Pacific on canoes. Micronesians in Guam and the Marianas also have their distinct Chamorro culture, and they live by the concepts of emote and meñaina. American Samoans are obviously the cousins of the Samoans. They have their unique Matai and chiefdom systems of ruling themselves, and the Fa'a Samoa, or Samoan way of life. The Virgin Islands is like a mini Jamaica. They have their own Creole English, Quelbe, or scratch bands, amazing seafood, and the unique Malby drink made of tree bark. Puerto Ricans are kind of like the US's favorite Latinos. Politics aside, they have created so many cultural impacts that have crept onto the mainland, especially in places like New York and Florida. Home of bomba, reggaeton. Everyone knows Robert Clemente, Ricky Martin, J-Lo, Daddy Yankee, and Luis Fonsi. So that's the quick, condensed overview of the US's regional cultures. There is so much more we could have mentioned, but it would take forever. If you are from a region of the USA with a distinct cultural trait we missed, write it in the comments and teach us. I guess with all of that, we go back to the crazy Florida region, because now it is Florida Man Keith's time to talk to us about the music. Take it away, crazy Florida Man. Woo, we did it!
Did it!
That's the America episode!
Okay.
All right, we're in Florida.
Hey,
yeah, made it to Florida.
Yeah,
Woo,
there's
back.
even a fight going on outside, so that's how you know it's real Florida. Hey, what's up, everybody? What's up? Named Keith. Woo! Thanks for having me on the show, Paul. I'm not trying to sound cocky or anything like that. Every other country on the face of the earth deserves its own spotlight. With all that being said, we're the #1 music market in the entire world. We export more music and entertainment to the rest of the world than any other country ever. But first, let's take it back, way back, to the indigenous people of the United States. Native Americans are known for their powwow events of, war drums and dancing and singing and all kinds of really great traditional things, along with the Hawaiians, who have the luau's, and it's pretty amazing too, and they got the fire spinning. And the Inuits have their traditional throat singing that they perform. So the largest Native American powwow event in the United States is called the Gathering of the Nations, and you can go check out this event in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's performed every April, and I highly recommend you guys go and check it out. In Hawaii, you have also the Merry Monarch Festival. It's like the most Hawaiian thing you can possibly see with your own two eyes. Unless if you have one eye, then it's the most amazing thing with your one eye. Now let's fast forward. American music really started to gain its international recognition in the 1800s with things like vaudeville and acapellas. Like the Fisk Jubilee singers who broke barriers and received the National Medal of Arts. Prior to the 20th century, American music was either classical, parlor music / saloon music. All Americans know such songs like Home on the Range and Oh Susanna by Stephen Foster. And then something crazy happened. Jazz. Oh my God, jazz. Woo! There is nothing more American than jazz music, a very highly intellectual form of music. Jazz basically changed the entire world or helped shape today's modern music. I mean, you can take, the chord structures, like complex chord structures. I mean, songs like Giant Steps. You literally have every other beat where it changes like a chord, to odd time signatures. I mean, Take 5 was like a very popular jazz standard that was by this record, Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. Miles Davis set the standard of how good jazz can sound, in my opinion. But let's be real. I mean, you also had John Coltrane in his band. I mean, even at points, Bill Evans was on his record. Today's music wouldn't be anything without jazz. I mean, I also want to highlight blues music just as much as jazz, because without blues as well, we wouldn't have had the era of rock and roll. People like Howlin' Wolf, B.B. King, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Gary Clark Jr. Without blues, we would have never gotten into eventually having Elvis Presley, to the beyond, into the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and everybody's favorite bands at one point. It all kind of stems from the blues. We can't leave out what was going on in New York City with hip-hop culture. So basically, it all started with a guy named DJ Kool Herc. It took off from there. You have Detroit for Motown. And how can we forget about Nashville? Nashville, the main thing that people see is country music, but you can just as much go to indie show and go check out some indie hipster band, or go check out a metal band. Believe it or not, Nashville has the highest musicians per capita in the entire world. Texas was the birthplace of Tejano. Every Mexican American knows Selena, and probably has some sort of private room in their closet with a shrine dedicated to Selena. With all that being said, so many of our American artists have gained international recognition and fan base. You can be in the middle of the Himalayas going camelback and come upon a salt mine, and some dude is gonna be all like, dude, have you ever checked out the Thriller record from Michael Jackson? And then you're gonna be like, yeah, who doesn't know Michael Jackson? Yeah, bro. 'Cause there's a Thriller. I'm sure this part is gonna get flagged and taken down. Anyways, I love all of you. Thanks so much for having me on the America episode. My name's Keith.
Good job, Keith.
Yes, America. Woo!
Thank you, Keith, the real original Florida man. Okay, so yeah, I'm not even gonna try and end this segment with something witty. This episode is already the longest we've ever had on the channel, so let's just jump into the final segment, shall we? The Friend Zone. When it comes to our diplomacy and foreign policy, the USA is quite the extrovert. And even if there's a diplomatic strain or limited interaction in one area of the world, we still have some degree of connection thanks to our incredibly diverse population and diaspora communities. I literally found people from places like South Sudan, the Solomon Islands, and even our rarest guest, Carrie, from Tuvalu, here in the United States. That's how insanely diverse and interconnected our nation is. In any case, the motion graphic.
As a member of numerous IGOs in Asia, the USA works closely with many members and has deep ties to them. For example, after World War II and the Korean War, the US has invested heavily in Japan and South Korea, and today they are the only two East Asian countries with visa-free access to the US. The Philippines is super close too, as they were once a US colony. They speak English, and many American cultural traits have adopted into Filipino society. India shares a close relationship, as they make the second largest Asian diaspora community in the US after the Chinese. They have huge bilateral trade deals and joint military exercises. They are easy to engage with as an Anglophone nation, and heads of state have met numerous times. With China, it's almost always a complicated, extensive economic-based relationship, and of course there's the whole Taiwan thing. Basically, in the 70s, former President Richard Nixon visited, and soon after, the US-China joint communique and the 6 assurances were established. Long story short, no matter how things get, we keep doing this thing where it's like, I think I'm better than you, but I want to keep dancing with you. Otherwise, as a member of various North and South American organizations, the US has very obvious and close ties to their North and South American neighbors. In the broadest sense, they are all kind of like New World countries that share a similar story of being built off of European colonialism, evolving into the vibrant new societies that they are today. The US was the first country to recognize Brazil as a nation in 1808, and many sociologists will say that Brazil is kind of like the closest country resembling the US in shared experiences related to their demographic makeup. The only real major difference is that Brazil was more Catholic influenced, whereas the US was more Protestant. Otherwise, moving on to Africa, the US cooperates in many discussions with the AU and ADB. The African Growth and Opportunity Act in 2000 provides preferential cooperation to the US market for eligible African countries such as Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. And today, many African Americans do pilgrimage trips, and some even get dual citizenship. Oh yeah, and Liberia was like the US's long-lost adoptive African stepchild that we keep forgetting. We really need to pay more attention to them and give them more love. When it comes to Europe, though, basically the US has always had some kind of constant interaction with Europe since the inception of our nation's independence. France was the first country to establish diplomatic relations with us. Also, thank you for giving us the Statue of Liberty. Over the years, Europeans from virtually every corner of the continent immigrated to the US and built communities and neighborhoods. After World War II, we signed the Marshall Plan, which was a huge economic recovery act, which eventually evolved into the formation of NATO. The only main European relationship that has a roller coaster of diplomatic instability typically lands with Russia, rooted in the Cold War era conflict, but this is a topic for another time. When it comes to our best friends, however, typically Americans will probably root for one of the teen major Anglophone nations. We Americans hardcore crush on the Aussies and Kiwis. I personally feel like nothing illustrates this more than the Irwin family. We share a history of being former British colonies. We are members of ANZUS, the Pacific Committee, and a partner in the Pacific Islands Forum. We share very common political and cultural interests. We've almost always teamed up and had each other's backs on numerous international conflicts. And yeah, overall we love them. Then we hit a little closer to home and get to Canada and the UK. Canada is more like our obedient little brother that stuck with Daddy Britain as we broke away and got our own apartment. Later on, they saw us having so much fun and then kind of slowly and politely requested to leave Dad's nest. Nonetheless, in a technical sense, Canada has the oldest shared relationship with us, as we were both being formed at the same time. So we ultimately really get each other, and we share so much in common in regards to culture, values, and politics. We both speak English, much to the chagrin of the Quebecois. About 75 to 85% of their trade goes through the USA. Granted, sometimes Canadians hope they don't get too Americanized and they try to salvage their Canadian identity, whatever that means. But ultimately, we love them. We marry the crap out of each other. We hire their musicians and actors. They let us film in Vancouver for super cheap. And we love how they hate it when we call them our 51st state. Finally, we end up with the old man, UK. The US is the rebel son that broke away, yet after things cooled off, we totally laughed about it and became the closest friends all over again. Today, the two countries share the world's largest direct foreign investment partnership and virtually go hand in hand in almost every international issue. The UK is like our connection to Europe, and recently both countries have affirmed the other as being the country with the most important bilateral partnership in their foreign policy. Long story short, the story ends right where it began. The USA and UK will always look out for each other.
All right, the motion graphic is over. It's time to do this. In conclusion, look, personally, if you're American, you're my family. We don't always have to agree on everything. In fact, we might not even like each other. We might even kind of hate each other a little bit. But the point is, if you're an American, you're still my family. And at the end of the day, my family comes first. I'll still have your back. Nobody messes with my crazy family. And if you have a green card, it's like you're kind of engaged to my family and I can't wait for the wedding. If you're undocumented and you call this country your home and you love it and you work hard and you have good character and want to be a part of the family, then I'm rooting for you to take all the necessary steps to join the family. And for those of you saying that we have problems, yeah, of course we have problems. We always had problems. We always will. But look at our history. When there was a problem, we didn't stick with it grumbling and twiddling our thumbs. We openly acknowledged it, we erupted a little bit, we let things get messy, and then we figured things out. That's kind of how we do things. We're Americans. We're still figuring things out, and we're not even 300 years old. We're just getting started. We're not done. We're never done. We don't stop. You're part of a people and nation that has done amazing things that the world has never seen before. You're part of that amazingness. It's like by default, you Americans are already unique. You're already amazing. You might not recognize it or feel it, but you are. We became our own royals, and this is our home, and I love you all. Oh shoot. Uruguay. Stay tuned. Uruguay is coming up next. Sorry, you have to follow that.